Hi, I'm Sebastian Bird, and today I'll be discussing why trench warfare became the dominant type of conflicts during World War One and the factors that led to it. World War One, throughout the years, has always been portrayed as a conflict in which stationary trench warfare reigned. Images of thousands of innocent men leaving the safety of their trench to attack the enemy en masse before being mowed down through such means as machine guns and artillery are burned into the general public's mind. But just why did this mode of fighting come about and dominate much of the conflict? To answer this, we must look at several different factors such as the political situation in Europe, military tactics, and technological advances. Prior to World War One, trench warfare had been used in various conflicts around the globe, albeit not to the same extent. Sieges often saw the digging of trenches, which combined with fortifications were meant to keep defenders from sallying forth. Good 19th century examples of this include the Siege of Petersburg in the American Civil War, the Siege of Sevastopol in the Crimean War, and the Battle of Plevna in the Russo-Turkish War. Trenches as field fortifications were used in the Russo-Turkish, Second Anglo-Boer, Russo-Japanese and the Balkan Wars to shelter units from enemy firepower. Conflicts like the American Civil War and the Franco-Prussian War had seen the use of above-ground field fortifications, either purpose-built or ad hoc, like walls or sunken roads. However, it was the developments in rifle artillery and explosives technology from the early 1870s onwards that led to a shift towards below-ground trenches that could completely shelter soldiers from enemy fire. Although it may not seem like it, the development of trench warfare was influenced first and foremost by the international politics of the time. Many countries in Europe thought that in the event of war breaking out, the conflict would soon be resolved as seen in many wars fought in the years prior. This made the idea of war seem less sinister to many of the great European powers. This can be seen primarily in the Schlieffen Plan, drawn up by Germany prior to the outbreak. The plan laid down details of a swift German advance through Belgium and the Netherlands. This was countered by France in their own military plan, Plan 17. It was due to this that the German army suffered unexpected setbacks in Belgium and encountered significant resistance in their advance across the frontiers. German soldiers were required to march over great distances and also fight. Several authors such as Tuckman, Hastings, Keegan and Terrain have also noted that German soldiers were reaching the end of their stamina by the Battle of the Marne. It was at this point that the commander-in-chief of the French forces, Joffre, counterattacked. The German forces retreated and began to prepare for an Allied pursuit by taking defensive positions. Both sides needed time to recuperate. This began the so-called race to the sea, which was really an effort on both sides to find flanks on either side of the trench, which resulted in trenches being hundreds of miles long all across the Western Front. Through this, we can see the significance of how politics between two countries at the time could influence the type of warfare utilised, due to their ignorance in realising that technology had advanced past the point where manoeuvre warfare was no longer viable and actually contributed towards the development of mass trench warfare. In the initial stages of the war, many frontiers consisted of a type of warfare known as manoeuvre warfare, which was not unlike the tactics used in various conflicts close to the time. It is still a viable option today for many armed forces and is characterised by quick-moving shock troops surprising the enemy in order to confuse, incapacitate and eventually defeat them. On paper, this sounds the exact opposite of trench warfare. So just how and why did the armed forces of the great powers resort to trench warfare over manoeuvre warfare? Well, in the early stages of World War One, manoeuvre warfare was used to great effect by both the German and French armies, which saw various frontiers being opened where French and German troops would seesaw rapidly over controlled ground, as is the nature of manoeuvre warfare. The problem arose when military generals changed their tactics in regards to defence. Constant back and forth attacking left armies fatigued, and so to recuperate, generals ordered tactical retreats in the digging of trenches in order to defend and replenish their forces. This eventually led to two sides at a stalemate, choosing defence over fast-paced, tiring and risky attacks. Through this, we can see how early tactics in the war were just not viable considering how long the war lasted. Trench warfare was a result of short-term fatigue influencing long-term defence. As each side came face to face with stiffening opposition, military leaders recognised that a breakthrough could only be achieved by massing men, equipment and shells. All of this required a major logistical effort that necessitated detailed planning. In order to protect and build up an army in preparation for an assault, defensive positions are a requirement. They also, of course, constitute the best means to prevent an opponent from succeeding in his own efforts to break through. Perhaps the most important factor when looking at the influences on how trench warfare became the predominant type of warfare in World War One is technology and just how much it advanced in such a short amount of time. Prior to World War One, weapons such as machine guns, long-range artillery and explosives were not as well developed. Machine guns existed, but they were often horse-drawn and stationary emplacements, which required a very specific situation in order to be considered useful. Artillery was much the same, but advancements in logistical technology allowed both these weapons to be manoeuvred around a battlefield a lot easier than before. Range of artillery was also a massive advancement, allowing enemy positions miles from the artillery gun to be shelled. Trench warfare became the norm because it was the most effective way to shelter troops from modern long-range weapons. Whilst rifles and machine guns were devastating against troops with no cover, the real killer during the Great War was artillery, according to Sheffield and Holmes. Trenches also provided a strong defence, which, as the years went by, became increasingly complex, with various schemes to provide defence in depth. Prior to the development of the early combined arms tactics of 1917 to 1918 and the debut of armoured vehicles, trenches were a powerful form of protection that would not only blunt an enemy attack, but would allow the defenders the ability to use their own weapons to great effect. As the war waged on, technology advanced and the coordination between infantry, artillery, aircraft and tanks increased. Trenches became less and less useful so that by 1918 attacking forces were able to seize defensive positions which would have resulted in bloody failure only a few years before. To conclude, trench warfare came to symbolise the very nature of World War I and came about due to the tactical shock of the idea of a prolonged war, in which modern anti-infantry weaponry reigned. It was a type of warfare which protected best when compared to others, yet held very little attacking prowess without the later developments of tanks, armoured vehicles and aircraft to support an assault. Thanks for watching and I hope you've learned something.